It was barely 8 in the morning, and the kitchen already smelled of burnt coffee. Light from the narrow windows spread in milky beams on the battered countertops. I stood by my station, apron slightly crooked, holding a batch of soggy medialunas I'd just pulled from the oven. The day was already off to a crooked start. Baldovino, head chef and resident tyrant, picked up one, held it at eye level and sneered for the entire prep staff to see. "This is unacceptable, Eligio. Waste of butter, waste of flour, waste of everyone's time." He turned the pastry over, as if expecting it to redeem itself Medea, then dropped it onto the steel bench with a wet thud that echoed. "Maybe," he said, staring at me with sharp, pale eyes, "you're not meant for this work. Maybe next time you want to play chef you do it at home. Better yet, don't stick to rolling bread. It's hard to mess that up." Laughter rippled behind me, some of it nervous, some just mean. I felt my ears burn. I could see Giulio in the corner, the young expeditador, grinning widely. "Chef Novio de la Media Luna," he whispered, sending another round of giggles through the huddle of commi. "Don't look at them, don't." I kept my eyes fixed on the oven clock, counting the seconds. The silence in my chest was heavy, vast, shot through with the kind of anger reserved for being mocked, not for failing, but for daring. I scraped the ruined batch into the compost, then started prepping dough for another round. Hands steady, jaw set, there was nothing I could say, nothing that wouldn't make it worse. I repeated the recipe in my mind, kneading and folding, pressing down on every anxious thought. Maybe there really was nothing special about what I wanted. Maybe dreaming of opening my own bakery with pastries good enough to make people stop on the sidewalk was a child's fantasy. Here, in this kitchen, perfection belonged to someone else. All I had was silence and resolve. When my shift ended, I lingered by the lockers, pretending to adjust my scarf. Outside, city traffic coughed and sputtered. I could already picture the way my mother would look at me when I walked in for lunch, a mix of concern and disappointment, her lips pursed, eyebrows drawn. She never liked hearing about the kitchen. Her belief was simple: people like us didn't own businesses, we worked for them. On the walk home through Almagro's morning streets, I let my mind drift. I passed the old Almacén with its posters for political rallies and tango shows. Elderly men sat on rickety chairs at the corner cafe, arguing softly over football and the mayor. I wondered if they'd always lived with small dreams, or if they'd tried something that everyone called ridiculous once too. At home, lunch was milanza, limp lettuce and hard bread. My younger sister Luli scrolled mindlessly on her phone at the kitchen table. My mother hovered over the stove, never pausing in her silent audit of my life. "How was work today?" she asked, a knife tapping rhythmically against the onion she chopped. "It was fine," I said, sitting. There was always a pause after my answer, room for interrogation. Instead, Luli chimed in. "Mama, Eligio wants to open his own bakery," she said with a smirk, glancing up just to see my reaction. She said it as if repeating a joke only she found funny. My mother's sigh was theatrical, practiced over years of disappointment. "That again, do we look like people who take risks like that, Eligio?" She was matter of fact, as if describing the weather. "Just get good at your job, save, buy a little car one day, simple." "Let him dream, Ma," Luli said with the mocking affection she reserved for me. "He'll be the king of croissants." "Kings get their heads chopped off in this country," my mother muttered. I ate quietly, the food tasting of lemon and fatigue. Nothing I said would matter, not until I had something real to show her. So I swallowed the loneliness with the crusts and pushed on. I stuck with Baldovino's kitchen for another year. In that time my pastries improved. Sometimes he said nothing, sometimes he'd grumble, not offensive, with a shrug. Not ridicule, not praise, but maybe I was closing the distance. Late at night I practiced in our tiny kitchen. Flour dusted the counter, my arms, everything. Mistakes went into Tupperware, only for Luli to snap a photo and share it with her friends, the failed star of a group chat full of emojis. Once she brought some to a party and came back giggling. "Nobody ate them, but Marian's dog loved them," she reported, tossing the cleaned container on my bed. If this was support, I thought grimly, I'd hate to meet my critics. Nevertheless, I saved every peso. I watched online tutorials, read old French cookbooks, messaged strangers who posted photos of their shops, chasing whatever scrap of wisdom I could glean, sleeping less and dreaming more. Sometimes, around dusk, I'd walk by old bakeries on Avenida Corrientes, staring in, watching the yellow lights, picturing my name on the window. El Obrador de Eligio, I could see it. I could almost taste the sweetness in the air. But reality insisted. Whenever I slipped up, I once broke the proofing machine. Baldovino raised an eyebrow, smug. "Don't quit your day job," he said quietly so only I could hear. The silence that came next was no longer heavy, it became armor. I kept my head down until I couldn't anymore. On a day thick with summer storm clouds, I handed Baldovino my resignation. He didn't look up from his paperwork. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he said. "The city's already full of failed geniuses." I walked out with my bakery shoes in a plastic bag, heart trembling. The rain was warm, falling in ceaseless sheets, soaking me through. I pressed on past the subway and the grey buildings, feeling both free and petrified. For months I searched. No one wanted to lease a bakery kitchen to a young stranger with hand-me-down knives and no collateral. I knocked on doors. I handed out my resume at every bakery between Belgrano and Saavedra. At night, I'd lie in bed listening to the storm pipes rattle, the city shuddering toward morning. My mother kept quiet, but her eyes said everything. Luli would roll her eyes. "Stubborn as a two-headed mule," she joked to her friends, but now there was a note of worry. One afternoon, after another round of polite rejections, I passed a shuttered storefront in Villa Crespo. The window was dirty, half covered in peeling stickers for soda and cigarettes. Taped to the glass was a battered sign, SEALQUILA. The phone number was nearly illegible. I called. The owner showed up the next day, an old man in a threadbare shirt smelling of cigar smoke. He gave me a long, skeptical look. "This block used to have real bakeries, you know," he said. "Now it's hair salons and dog walkers." "What do you know about bread, chicos?" "Enough to know it should make people smile," I said quietly. He snorted but showed me the back room, the rusted oven, the warped shelves. "The rent is low because so is hope, but I like your eyes. You bake, you pay, no nonsense." I signed the lease on a Tuesday, my hand trembling the whole time. Home that night I told my mother, her eyes widened. "You're gambling with our future for a pile of broken ovens." Her voice shook. "Ridiculous." She turned away, leaving me in silence. But it was a silence I'd learned to inhabit, sharp, uneasy, full of possibility. I spent everything fixing up the space. I peeled stickers from the windows. I painted the walls a pale blue my sister called hospital chic. I scoured the oven and spent hours testing batches of dough, ruining my hands because I couldn't afford gloves. Opening day wasn't grand. I made medialunas and pan dulce, set them on battered racks and watched the street. No one came for an hour, then a young woman with a toddler wandered in, bought a half dozen, and left without a word. Word spread just slowly enough to torture me. After a week I sold out by noon. The coffee shop 2 doors down offered to carry some pastries, and I started waking before dawn, showing up with flour on my chin. Days blurred. My mother came by, standing at the window, arms crossed. She never came in, but sometimes she'd linger, watching. Luli filmed a TikTok, let it get lost among videos of skateboarding poodles and makeup tutorials. In the quiet hours when I locked up, I allowed myself to dream. Maybe one day people would come not just for medialunas, but for something that was mine, something new. I started testing recipes. Croissants filled with dulce de leche, cakes soaked in mate syrup, tarts crowned with roasted strawberries. Years passed, days folding into each other. I hired a helper, then another. Our sign went up one winter, ELOBRADORDEALEJO, gleaming in script across clean glass. The shop became a place where old men argued over chess, and children lined up after school with sticky fingers. But I never forgot the cold kitchen where Baldovino mocked me, the way my family rolled their eyes behind closed doors. Their skepticism wasn't gone, it merely echoed softer in the corners of my memory. Each new doubt was an ember for the fire that burned quietly inside. One afternoon in late spring, I got a call from a food critic, Mariana Galvan, whose reviews could make or break restaurants across Buenos Aires. She visited unannounced, eating in silence by the window while I watched from behind the espresso machine, heart pounding. She ordered the croissants and a slab of torta rogel, then disappeared with a small, satisfied nod. The review ran on Sunday. She called El Obrador a bakery revolution in Villa Crespo, its pastries worthy of the windows of Paris. I let myself read that phrase again and again, letting it soak into my bones. The next day, the line stretched down the block. Friends from the old neighborhood came by, shaking my hand and slapping my back. "I always knew you had it in you," one said, though I remembered his laughter long ago. But the most electric day came a week after the review. I was shaping dough in the kitchen when I heard the front bell tinkle. I wiped my hands, poked my head out, and froze. There in the sunlight stood my mother, her arms looped through Luli's, both surveying the packed little shop. Behind them, the door opened again and Baldovino stepped inside. He wore a suit, his eyes flicking over the counter and display case. I walked out pressing my apron smooth with flour-stiff hands. Baldovino nodded at me, lips pursed. "Place looks clean," he said, scanning. He picked up a croissant, turned it over, examined it in that same old way, searching for failure. He broke it open, releasing fragrant steam, and tasted. For a moment, I thought he'd spit it out, launch into another monologue. But instead, silence fell. Only the bustle of customers and the hum of the espresso machine filled the air. He took another bite, then placed the pastry down very carefully. "Not offensive," he said, but his voice was softer, reluctant. "Actually, not bad." My mother said nothing, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch, something softens in her eyes. Luli caught everything on video, her smirk now hid something like pride. Baldovino stayed by the window, quietly ordering a selection to go, as though not wanting to leave too soon. My mother walked behind the counter. For the first time she looked at the space, our space, not with suspicion but with curiosity. Her finger traced the edge of the marble display, pausing at a tart. "Did you make this one?" she asked quietly. "All of them," I said. She nodded, then turned, surveying the people taking photos, children fighting over crumbs, the sunlight spilling across tables. She reached out, squeezed my arm lightly. "Maybe your head wasn't so ridiculous after all," she said. She tried to sound annoyed, but tears blinked at the edge of her voice, as if the years between that kitchen table and this moment had shrunk to nothing. Outside, Buenos Aires rolled on, indifferent to my little victory. But for the first time I felt the silence break within me, not with anger but with a fullness so wide and shimmering, I wanted to laugh out loud. When closing time came, Luli leaned against the door frame, grinning. "So does the king of croissants give family a discount or what?" she teased. She flashed her phone, showing the viral video, hundreds of likes, comments, disbelief. "Is that really a Lijo? No way, dude from Almagro." I passed her a box to take home, heart pounding with a strange peace. The city outside was still noisy, complicated, imperfect. Skeptics would always crowd the fringes. But through the glass, the golden letters of my name glowed fiercely, proof against any darkness. I was home, I had left, I had returned, and everything, every pain, every joke, every silent challenge, was baked into the sweetness of that day. And Buenos Aires, stubborn and sprawling, finally tasted something I made with my own two hands.